I call this pattern the Simp Frog because it is super simple and it's got those fat bass simping like the nice kid in high school. Look at these fat monsters. This fly crushes it. It's super budget friendly and it is very straightforward. It's going to have most of the supplies that any fly tire will have already, but if you don't, head on over to Walmart and pick up a couple sheets of foam for like $5.99 for 20 sheets. It'll last you years of fly tying, and I make a lot of different flies out of this. The most important part, make a guide. This is going to be 1 inch in length from the front of the fly to the back, and then on the width, there are 2 sizes. The short side, which is the back of it, is going to be 0.75 inches or 3/4 of an inch, and then the long one's going to be 1.25 inches or 1 1/4 inches. If you have to rewatch this video or pause it to write those down, if you really want me to hold your hand, then do it. Or just go get some foam and start cutting out some shapes. It doesn't matter if you do it in this shape. I did a lot of experimenting with different shapes, and this is just the one that I liked the most. I got 4 different colors, but in reality, you could do all the same color. You could do colors that don't make any sense with matching it at all. You could do all browns. I'm usually a green or browns kind of guy. Once you've cut out all the layers of foam that you're going to need, you need 4 layers for this pattern, and you can come in and chip off the excess so that they're nice and uniform. This is what it looks like compared to the finished product. And then probably the most important step in this part of the fly is cutting the second most layer, which happens to be my yellow layer. Cut it down the middle in half, and then you're going to shave off about the width of the hook that you're going to be using to tie this fly all together. And you want to make sure, it's okay if you go a little bit over, and you'll see later that what I'm going to do is once I've used up those little strips, I'm going to either use those same ones or cut off some more strips of my own and then tie those to the hook so that it connects and glues better to the foam body. Next step is going to be to take all your sheets of foam and glue them together. The hardest part is probably this part where you're taking the bottommost piece of foam and then gluing the second layer to it, since it's like 3 separate pieces. What I like to do is match up the corners at the front, like the widest part of the fly. I like to match up those tip-top corners and then try to guide it in. And this is what it's going to look like. That bass is going to be coming from behind. My hand's the bass. And the bass will be coming from behind to grab it. So I don't know why I do that, but I do almost every time. This is going to take the 3rd layer and glue it to the topmost layer. So you're going to have like 2 halves of a sandwich. You got your bread, and then the hook eventually is going to go in there by might. I would like to point out that I'm not using a nice pair of scissors right now. This is like one of my old, not good anymore scissors that I've used into early retirement because I have used it so much and worn down all the grooves. So don't think that I'm using my best scissors for cutting this foam, because you shouldn't do that. Next step is going to be to draw in some guides for where you want the eyes to go. You'll see that I actually mess it up a little bit, and these eyes go on a little off center. That is a-okay. It does not matter to the fish, but you know, it's for me. It's one of those me things. So put on your Googly Eyes. I got these also from Walmart. I'm sure you can find some on Amazon for really cheap. They're probably about 4 or 5 millimeters in size. And then we're to the next part, which means you got to get your hook. And we're using a lightning strike. I guess it's a saltwater hook. I just noticed that reading it. But it's a popper hook. And it's got that groove in it to keep poppers from moving, I think. I've never liked that groove. I wish they would just make it with a straight shank, and I'd be just as happy with it. But here's the part that I was mentioned earlier, where you take a strip, and I'm actually cutting it in half, and I'm going to tie the strip on either side of the shank of the hook. That's to make the hook wider and to also make there be just like more surface area for where the foam head is going to grip onto the hook itself. Because a lot of times what you'll see, and eventually this popper will fall apart. Like you can use this for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 fish. But then eventually, unless you waterproof this fly, it will get waterlogged and disintegrate. But that's kind of true with all flies. Anyway, tie in this extra girth onto the shank of the hook so that it really fills in that gap on your foam head Once you've done that, you're going to tie off. I did a really pretty job of it there. And then you're going to add an obscene amount of glue. The reason you're adding so much glue is that foam soaks it up, and then you're going to almost immediately attach the foam so that it doesn't dry before the foam goes in. Also, make sure that you're really purposeful with when you place it. You have to like get straight to the point, or else it'll set in an awkward way, and then you've essentially ruined all your progress to that point, and you're going to have to just Control Alt Shift Delete and start over. So once you've got that placed, you're going to then put a lot of glue on that top yellow layer, and then connect the top 2 layers, making yourself a little hook sandwich. And there you go. The foam head part of this fly is now done. And now you're going to tie back in so that you've got lots of thread on that shank for where the other materials are going to go. Remember that these hooks are really slippery. I've seen some guys, they'll like score the hook, like scratch it up. I don't ever do that because I think it's kind of goofy. The length of the Zonker strip that you're going to use here, I'm just using it to be one length of the shank length of the hook. It's actually a little bit longer if you're really looking close, but to me that's fine. I've always thought, like when I was early on in my fly tying, I kind of felt that having really long tails on flies was stupid because I could see it getting hit by smaller fish, and therefore I'd be like, if it's that long of a tail, I'm missing some hookups. Well, not a big deal. These bass like swallow this thing whole, so it's so big that that shouldn't matter. Next step is going to be add in your Sili Legs. And I just want to remind y'all that it doesn't really matter what color scheme. For poppers, I've always felt that the most important thing is the profile, like the shape, and then how much water it moves, and then also like how you fish it. But just to make it nice and pretty for me, I'm keeping it along the green color scheme. So I've got myself some green, I think they're called centipede Sili Legs. Next thing we're going to do is use some neck hackle. I end up using 2 feathers of neck hackle, and you can also use all kinds of different materials to just kind of cover up the shank of this hook. I'm putting these here to hide my tie-in and to add kind of like a poofy buffer between where the tail is tied in, the Zonker strip, where the legs are tied in, and then just trying to hide like the ugly back end of that fly. But we're going to go ahead and tie in a second one because I ran out of it. You could use hackle of all kinds to do this as long as it's nice and long. You could use another Zonker strip. I've tied these with red Zonker strips or red marabou that's tied around the shank, kind of the same way this hackle is. Really, it doesn't matter as long as you're covering up that space and just adding some more interesting detail there. It really doesn't make a difference. And honestly, if you didn't put anything there and left it bare, it wouldn't look very sexy, but it'd still probably catch fish. So I've had some people recommend, this is not something that I usually do, but I've started trying it because it's been some recommendations in the comments on some of the videos, putting glue on the line for a couple of inches, doing wraps, and then tying a knot. And then like the thought is that that glue that's in the line will then hold it tight, and you don't have to like do a big old nasty glob at the end. So make sure that you stay to the end of the video so you can see how you fish this fly. I am in East Texas on a John boat on a private pond with Cousin Neil, and it's early in the morning. It's been hot for weeks, and then the first day the temperature kind of dropped a little bit. We were a little nervous about the bite being off, and then we showed up, and it was amazing. The topwater bite is just, there's no more fun way to fish, in my opinion, than catching fish on top of the water. It could be small fish, big fish, doesn't matter. Getting to see it happen is just so cool. There's Cousin Neil, you handsome devil. Cousin Neil actually fished me under the table this day. He was using conventional tackle and was crushing it on like whopper ploppers and a bunch of different tackle that I don't know the name of because I don't really do a whole lot of conventional fishing. But both of us did really, really well. The way that I'm fishing this fly, especially because it's early in the morning and the water's really still, I'm throwing it out there. I've got a 5-weight rod, which is arguably too small for 2, 3, 4-pound bass. However, whatever, I'm up for a challenge. I love fishing rods that are slightly smaller than the weight class of fish you're going after. and I'm letting it sit really slow. It hits the water pretty hard because it's a big, heavy fly. I let it sit there, and then I'm going to wait 1,000, 1,000. If nothing hits it right away, and that day they wanted to chase it, I think, then I'm going to start doing long, lazy, slow strips. So 1,000, 1,000. Nothing happens. Long, lazy strip. Long, lazy strip. Just gulp, gulp, makes this awesome little noise. And then after 4, 5, 6 strips, that's when I was getting hit the most. Hopefully this works for you. If you like this fly, if you loved the pattern, let me know in the comments, give me a like, and subscribe. I'd like to make some more videos for you.